The Power Factor Show with Rick, Steve, and Caleb. Episode 81, Part 2.
You can find this podcast and others at Gun Rights Radio Network, gunrightsradio.com. Podcasting freedom.
Brought to you by Safariland and Hodgdon, the gunpowder people.
So you probably remember this because I think you were there, but my very first experience right after becoming an RO, I was running the paper. This was at Marysville. You probably know where I'm going with this.
I think I do.
Running the paper, somebody else is playing RO, shooter does something, and it was a breaking the 180. And I'm thinking, what is my authority of the paper guy at this point? And it turns out, if you want to know the answer, you as an RO, as a paper guy, have just, and I say paper guy, the person running the scoreboard or whatever, scorekeeper, have just as much authority as the guy holding the timer, or timer stand, as Rick likes to call him. So at any rate, the guy broke the 180, and I'm sitting there thinking, can I say anything? Do I say anything? So I said,
Steve, you make the right call, now get back out there.
So after he was done, I said to the RO something like, did you see such and such break the 180 there? And I didn't see it. Okay. Yeah. Next guy up. Same thing, same place, all over again. And I'm thinking, okay, I do have the authority to say something here. And I yelled, stop. And the RO turns around at me and he's like, what are you stopping him for? And I said, because he broke the 180. And his response was, well, if you want to be an RO, here. And he goes and tries to hand you the timer. And it's just like,
he stalked off.
Yeah, it's like, you want to play RO, you want to be RO, then here, you be the RO. It's like going, okay.
Yeah. Aren't we all here to not get anybody hurt?
Right, right. Can't we all just get along?
Yeah. But it was kind of interesting that you'll have the opportunity to make a judgment call like that, where did they break the 180, didn't they break the 180? And when, I think the person who's holding the timer generally feels like they're in charge.
Right.
And if they're willing to let something go and somebody else makes the call,
they're not in charge anymore.
Yeah. And the situation here was this guy felt like you were kind of stepping on his toes,
right.
like he's in charge.
Right.
And I think it's one of those situations where the guy with the timer and the guy with the paper have to work as a unit.
Their team.
Yeah. And so you can't take that attitude of I'm in charge, you're just here to write scores down.
Right. Yeah.
But it was just, evidence of something that you see where, an authority figure is impressed with their own authority.
Yeah, and usually, in terms of DQing, I've had to DQ a few shooters over the years, but I don't like doing it. But it's one of those things where I do not DQ anybody where I have a doubt in my mind at all that maybe they did or maybe they didn't. It has to be absolutely 100% certain that I know for a fact they did what they did, and it violates the rules. If there's
I thank you.
If there's any question whatsoever, I let it go. But in the instances where, I had DQ people, it was very clear, very obvious, and there was never any question about it whatsoever of, them trying to say, well, I didn't do that, or, whatever the case was.
Yeah. It's especially fun, though, when they know exactly what they did and they try to argue their way out of it.
Yeah, or try to find a loophole in the rule book.
It's one thing if they say, no, I didn't do that, but then, like, oh, yeah, you shot around over the berm. I did not. You did too. I did not. But if you made that hole in that barricade, I did not. Well, yeah, you did. That hole wasn't there before you got here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, here's the answer to our trivia question from a couple of episodes ago. If you'll recall, the setup for the question was you're at an IDPA sanctioned match where they are weighing the guns. And your gun, let's say you're shooting in Enhanced Service Pistol Division, where the weight limit is 43 ounces. You put your gun on the scale, and the readout on the scale says 43.1 ounces. And the question was, is the gun legal or not? And kind of along the theme of our first trivia question that Steve asked about, what was that one? What was the question about the...
I have no clue. Was it the magazine thing?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so it's a kind of a gray area question. And I went on I know what I would do, but I went on the internet and looked at some stuff. And the IDPA rulebook says that weights for divisions will be measured to the full ounce listed. So in this case, 43. Any gun that weighs over the listed division weight with a scale variance of no more than 0.2 ounce will not be legal for use in IDPA.
Does that mean you're up to 43.2?
That's the interesting part of the question. There's been, I haven't found much agreement on what the phrase a scale variance of no more than 0.2 ounces means.
I would say it's plus or minus 0.2.
At 0.2 on the readout or 0.2 on the accuracy level of the scale?
Well, I think they're one and the same. I mean, you know, the idea is I think you take a known weight, and there should be calibrated weights, and put it in the scale. Let's say you take a known weight of 43 ounces. You know it's 43 ounces, and the scale reads 43.2.
Right. So do you adjust the scale down?
Well, assuming you could adjust the scale down, that would be nice.
Right. Okay, so what if the scale is accurate in that it's repeatably weighing the same amount every time? If your gun goes on there and it says over 43, then then regardless of how much the gun weighs, it's not legal because the scale reads over.
Well, but I thought we just established that 43 ounces is reading 43.2 on the scale.
Well, 43.1 was the original question.
Right. I'm just thinking that if they're saying 0.2, I would think you could be going to 43.2, but what do I know?
Well, exactly, and as much as anybody here. So at our sanctioned matches, the way we interpreted the rule is that as long as the scale read less than 43.3 ounces, and that is with a digital readout that only goes to the 10th, just beyond the decimal place, the gun's legal. So if it says 43.2, because we have a 2/10 variance.
Okay.
So that means
over what?
What's that?
2/10 from what?
43.0.
Then isn't that 43.2?
Not if you're allowed a 2/10 variance.
2/10 on 43, 2/10 of an ounce?
Yeah.
Okay. 2/10 of an ounce.
Yeah.
So I think you'd be up to 43.2
would still be legal.
And you said 43.3 was legal.
As long as it's less than 43.3.
Okay. Does your scale read?
Scale only reads in tenths.
Got it.
So technically it could be as much as 43.29.
Yeah, but it only
as long as the readout is in tenths.
But it's going to round up to 43.3.
Okay, so here's what someone else said. The rule requires a scale with 0.2 ounce repeatability. What the rule is stipulating is that if you weigh something on your scale twice, both measurements have to be within 0.2 ounces. This does not automatically give everyone 0.2 over the listed maximum. The scale I use at my sanctioned matches measures to 4 decimal places and will give the measurement to 3 decimal places consistently. If a shooter's ESP gun weighed 43.1 ounces at my match, they'd be out of luck. For anyone wondering, we have test weights on hand if someone disputes a measurement. Yet another person. The most common definition of the word variance I found that was related to numbers is with regards to measurement, physics, and statistics, and defined to be, quote, the quantity equal to the square of the standard deviation, unquote. Meteorology, the science of measurements, including weights, seems to ascribe to the above definition of variance as well.
Have you contacted NIST about this?
No.
You should.
The less common definition of the word variance, as used in accounting, is defined to be, quote, difference between the actual value and the expected value. The Wikipedia article for this definition is a lot less rigorous about how this is computed and whether it is always a positive value or not. So, is the variance an allowable level of accuracy in the scale? It should not give a reading that varies more than 0.2 ounce for multiple weighing of a given item, or is it a variance in the weight of the gun to take into account the variation in accuracy of different scales?
You're making everybody's heads hurt right about now.
So I think that, and so to answer your question, I think you have no way of knowing when you arrive at a match exactly how the rule is going to be enforced. In fact, before this is part of the new rules addendum that came out, I think it's been a year ago now. Before this came out, what we would do at a match is we would actually tape over the digital part of the readout beyond the decimal.
Oh, so you're...
And we only dealt with the whole number.
0.1. Oh, really?
Only dealt with the whole number,
Okay.
So if you brought your ESP gun on the scale, you put it down and the scale said 43, you were good.
And even if the digit underneath was 0.9, you're
exactly,
okay.
you were still good. We just decided that and that was another thing about the definition of what is 43 ounces. Is 43 ounces 43.00 ounces, or is it less than 43.99 ounces? Different people had different ideas about even just what the definition of 43 ounces was. So we just decided we'd go with a whole number. If 43 popped up, your gun was legal. Now, since the rules addendum came out, as long as it doesn't read more than 43.2, your gun's legal. But as you can see from reading this, a lot of people seem to think that the .2 variation applies to the scale's accuracy and repeatability, rather than the readout.
Yeah.
So even if the scale is inaccurate, it still can't read more than 43.0 for you to pass.
Yeah.
And so when you go to get your gun weighed, have some idea of what it actually weighs. I mean, I took my gun in.
Don't go into the post office with your gun and ask to have it weighed. Not a good idea.
Yeah. If you know somebody that works at a place that has a postal scale, not the post office. For instance, I work at an office that has a mailroom, and we have postal scales in there. So if you know some place where you can take your gun and have it put on a postal scale. I had mine in a box. I weighed the box, so I knew how much the tear weight was, and then could just subtract that from the weight of the gun. But you really should know the weight of your gun within 1/10 of an ounce. And you can also rely on some forums and whatnot, because there are people who are shooting. There are certain guns that are well known as being very close to the weight limit. In ESP division, I think the CZ SP01 in stock form weighs about 44 ounces, and so there are special lightweight grips, and you can take various parts off of it to replace the ambi safety with a single-sided safety and whatnot, and drop those tenths of an ounce to get it to weigh. But the same thing with like 1911, you weigh a standard, what used to be considered a standard 1911, and it weighed about 39 ounces. Now if you've got a gun with a big steel magwell on it, ambidextrous safety, full-length guide rod,
steel mainspring housing.
Steel mainspring housing, it's probably going to weigh at least 43 ounces and maybe 44, 45 ounces. And then you've got the guns with the big light rails on the dust cover, and all that stuff adds up. So it's up to you to know how much the gun weighs. And as you can see from the little discussion here, there still is not total agreement on exactly what this 2/10 variance is going to do for you as a shooter when you arrive at the scale. So my suggestion is get some verification of how much the gun weighs, and pay attention.
Not at the post office.
Not at the post office.
Yeah. So do you want to do our next trivia question?
You have one?
Well, I'm thinking of something along the lines of this particular episode, which will be a USPSA rules
so this will be like a little USPSA Range Officer pre-test.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a prize for the winner.
Why don't you show what the prize for the winner is?
Here is the prize. This is, if my .2 variance is accurate.
Actually, we want to thank Paul Bispin for sending this in. Also, Paul's been a great viewer of the program, and Paul, we really thank Paul for sending in.
When I mentioned on the episode about hand loading that I reloaded cases with head stamps that have been completely obliterated from many reloadings, he sent me an email and said, "Man, I really feel sorry that you have to use that old beat up brass. Let me send you some." And I said, "Well, I use brass that's been once fired, and I use brass that's been 20 times fired. Thanks for the offer, but if you really want to get rid of the brass, send it to us and we'll give it away in a prize drawing on the show." So I understand this is 300 Remington Peters 45 ACP cases that are once fired.
Or almost once fired.
Mostly once fired. Mostly, if not totally once fired. They all look pretty good. And this will go to the first person who accurately answers the question?
Yeah, so probably what we ought to do here is the first person who accurately answers the question, and Paul, it would probably not be a good idea for you to get involved in this unless you want your brass back.
Right. And we're going to have timestamps on every answer so that we know if it comes in from Facebook or email or whatever.
Well, why don't we do it, everybody goes to YouTube, so there's one common point for
the first
everybody.
Correct answer on YouTube.
So, yeah.
Okay, Steve, fire away. What's the question?
So, here's the question. This will be a USPSA rules question. You're at a level 2 match, which means we're not applying level 1 standards or exemptions and stuff like that they have. And you have a shooting area. And the written SAGE briefing basically says, standing in the shooting area, engage targets as visible, whatever the case is. And let's say this shooting area is extremely small behind a barricade, and some people would actually call it a box, but we can't call it a box because
it's a level 2 match.
It's a level 2 match, so you have to call it a shooting area, which is this gets into the CRO course, but regardless.
But you see shooting areas that are outlined with raised fault lines. So let's say there's raised fault lines.
Right. So you've got a shooting area which looks like a box behind a barricade, and you got some targets that are downrange, and you decide that because of the fact that where a particular target's located at, that you can get a better angle onto it for your first shot by standing on the box fault lines. And the RO or CRO, or the guy running Rick's official designation, the timer stand says you can't do that.
It says
what?
Because the instructions are.
Yeah, because the instructions are standing in the box, right? And you say, and that's it. So what are you going to do?
Win the brass.
Yeah, and you need to be able to justify your answer.
And do they need the rule number? Page number?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it like it's the real auto test.
So
you not only have to be right,
and seriously, this is what it's going to get down to is that, and I could even go to the next level of this, but you could very easily, in fact, one of our buddies, Tom, ran into this at the Nationals where a RO told him, you can't do that. And if you want to push, if you have two choices here, you can say, okay, and fine, and stand in the box and play their game, or you can decide to explore the rule book. And if you're going to decide to explore the rule book, you better know what the rule is and be able to point it out to the CRO to basically state your case, because he's not going to let you do it until you're going to be able to back up why you're going to do it.
Right.
And I'm going to leave it at that and not take it any further. So there you go. So first person who responds with the correct answer of what are you going to do, be able to back your answer up.
The rule number.
With the rule number, wins the brass.
Yep.
So, and like I said, Paul, probably not a good idea.
Go ahead.
So one of the other advantages, from our standpoint, of becoming an RO is that we have worked many major matches, and one of the perks I do for typically major matches, and usually what happens is that a club put on a major match, they don't have enough ROs or enough experienced ROs to run a major match, and then typically what they'll do is they'll look within their section, and if they still can't get enough people, they'll start looking outside their section for shooters. But even if it's a situation where it's local and it's in their section, what they'll typically do is comp the match fee, meaning that you get to shoot the match for free. So you kind of get to weigh that one back and forth of, what is this worth to me? Because from the standpoint of, as staff, you're going to shoot the whole entire match in, let's say, 1 or 2 days. And then you get to work the match for 2 or 3 days. So, if the match is $150 or something like that, I'm just throwing numbers out at this point. But, is 2 or 3 days of working the match worth $150 to you? If you live local to the match and you're able to, go home each night and you're not having to pay for a hotel, then yeah, it might be worthwhile to you to go out and go work a match. But if you are having to go fly or drive or whatever out of town, and they're saying, yeah, well, we're going to comp your match fee at $150, but oh, by the way, now you're going to really be there for 2 or
3 more days,
3 more nights. Yeah, then you're looking at this going, so I'm basically not really breaking even from the standpoint I'm going to be working for 3 days, 2 or 3 days, so I can save my match fee. It doesn't really make any
truly
sense.
Major match, sometimes they'll put the staff up in a hotel.
And they have done that for us too.
Yeah. I shot and worked a nationals, multi-gun nationals in Albany, Oregon, and they put us up in a hotel for at least 5 days. We had a day for the staff match,
right?
And then there was a day when we were at the range doing, I think, setting up stages. We had a day off actually, which was kind of weird, and then we the two-day match. So I was in a hotel, and they gave us like $15 per diem for our meals at the range were provided during the day, but then for dinner we got the $15. So it was a cool experience. It was the weather was really nice, which you can't always count on, but. It's just it's something that you qualify for that by being a range officer. I got a letter in the mail the other day. They're looking for range officers at a match in Florida, and they wanted to know if I wanted to work the match. And I don't even remember if it was an area championship or if it was it was the USPSA championship.
Oh, really? Wow.
Which is kind of interesting
Yeah.
since USPSA and IPSC split.
Right.
You don't find many IPSC matches
There's
in the
only a
United
few.
States, but
Yeah.
this year there's an IPSC
It's a
United States
qualification.
IPSC
Right,
championship
right,
in
right.
Frostproof, Florida, and I
Right.
got a notice in the mail asking me if I was interested in working the match, and to fly all the way to, even if they're putting you up in a hotel and you're getting comped the match fee, if you have to fly to the East Coast from the West Coast, it's still going to be a great experience. But in terms of dollars and cents, how much sense does it make to spend all those dollars to work the match?
That was good.
And then you like that?
Was good.
You like that? You know, I was planning that earlier. But yeah, and so it's just one of those things where if the match is fairly close, you can sometimes, it's really an awesome deal, even financially, to do it. If the match is more distance, it's still defraying your cost of going there by having the match fee covered. But then again, you have to work into it. If you're going to spend an extra 2 nights at the hotel to work and shoot the staff match, it might just be a wash. But even a wash, it's worth it for the experience.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
I was going to say a story relating that. A couple of years ago, you and I got to worked the Area 1 Championship in Idaho. And a lot of our local shooting buddies were also working that match. My wife works for the airline industry, so we get to play big shots, and we flew into Idaho, rent a car, go work the match. All of our buddies show up after driving for
9 hours.
9 hours, drive in there. And we're all fresh as daisies. Oh, dude, and so, they all work the match. Then they turn around after the match and drive home 9 hours. We go to the airport, jump in the plane, fly home. All this is free to us. We literally, I don't think it really cost us much of anything. Our match fee was comped, the hotel was comped, we flew for free.
Yeah, that was a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, that worked out really well. So,
Yeah.
But not everybody gets to have those
So
benefits.
marry a flight attendant. That's become a range officer, marry a flight attendant, and everything will be taken care of.
And everything's perfect, so there you go. So I think that pretty much covers all the aspects of timer stand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, of course, as usual, if you have any questions, comments, you can find us at the website.
I'm going to make you do
PowerFactorShow.com.
I'm going to sit here until the program ends until you get it.
You can send us an email at powerfactorshow@gmail.com.
Right. And the last one, go ahead, Rick.
It's powerfactor/.
Well, if you're going from the back end to the front end, you're halfway there.
Oh, it's
this is
Facebook/Power Factor Show.
Yeah, what do most websites end in?
.com.
There you go. So put it all together.
Facebook/Power Factor Show.
No.
Facebook.com/Power Factor Show. So until next time.
Hold on, and remember.
Yeah, answer that question in the
Gotta get the
box,
rule
out of the
number
box.
right. Yeah.
All right.
First
Till next
one.
time. See ya.
Thank you.